Peace, family. Welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tony Cherie. Last week, we heard news of a huge anti-government protest coming out of the country of Senegal. If you have not seen that, I'm going to play this video so that you can have a full context of what's going on.
A night of celebration after days of protests. There he is, released on bail. Ousmane Sonko addresses the nation in this press conference. By his side are leading figures of Senegal's opposition.
The people are sending us politicians a message. No matter our convictions or beliefs, we have a responsibility to unite, reassure and bring back politics to its noble cause, representing the people.
Several people died and scores were injured after he was arrested over rape charges. His supporters believe the case is politically motivated. The presence of the military did not deter demonstrators, nor did the tear gas, nor the police dressed in civilian clothes wielding baseball bats. Restricting the internet too did not stop the hashtag Free Senegal from trending.
At this point, this may feel like deja vu because we've seen this continuously coming out of African countries and also in countries in the diaspora when you're really seeing a real pushback against these presidents. But the thing that should not be lost, it's probably being propagated inside of mainstream media, is that these are not protests merely against the governments or against the political figures. These are really protests against the colonial influence that Westerners have inside of Africa. If you don't see that in context, then you're going to lose the fact that the people are not just struggling for a new president, they're struggling for an end to the tyranny that they receive from the imperialists and from the colonialists that exist outside of their borders. I'm going to read from an article that I feel like really breaks this down, unlike many of the mainstream news coverage sources that we are receiving about this protest. Senegal's political crisis. Senegal is experiencing its largest protest in decades. Thousands of mostly young people have taken to the streets. Businesses have been looted. University students have pelted police with rocks, and the internet was shut down. At least 8 people have died, and one senior official described the country as being on the verge of an apocalypse. The protest began on March 3rd as opposition leader Ousmane Sonko made his way to court to face rape charges. When the 46-year-old stopped to greet his supporters lining the street, police arrested him for disturbing police order or public order. By the time Sonko appeared in court on March 8th, his supporters had unleashed chaos on the streets of Dakar and in other cities across the country. Now, I love this article because they said the thing that I think a lot of us know by now is that this is not just about the country, the administration in Senegal. This is really about the colonial influence that France has had on this region. As angry protesters moved through the capital and smaller cities, they tellingly targeted French-owned businesses and retail brands. My people, I'm telling you, if you really want to hurt them, hit their businesses. Total gas stations were burned down and more than a dozen supermarkets of the Auchan chain were looted. Protesters accused the group of undercutting local producers and merchants who have been hit hard by COVID-19 lockdown regulations. As is a common issue whenever you're talking about free trade, you give these colonial powers free trade inside of your jurisdiction. That means that your local producers do not have a chance whenever you're looking at a people who have benefited from centuries of exploitation of your country. Toll gates managed by a French firm were also destroyed, seen as a symbol of economic divide between those who can afford the fee and those who can't. Senegal is the home. Wait, let's back it up. Why are there toll gates managed by a French company inside of Senegal? That's another question, but let's keep going. Senegal is home to France's largest embassy in Africa, and the country, like many of its neighbors, still use the colonial era CFA franc, a currency linked to the French economy. With French troops stationed in the country, Paris also considers Senegal's president, Macky Sall, as a key ally in Africa, which may no longer count in his favor among young voters. And I would say if you really see what's going on, it probably is one of the things that's going to have him more ostracized from his people, because as I said, the realization of the people that it's not just the government that is their problem, but it's really the French influence on their government that is causing for their for a deterioration of their economic situation, that realization is only growing and the sentiment is only growing. And I'm actually, I want to hear more from people on the ground. The CFA franc is currently still being used. I was of the impression that they were supposed to be transitioning to another currency that I'm not even sure is one that's necessarily for the people, because I believe it was linked to the euro. So I would like to hear more from people on the ground as far as did they even give any indication of what actual changes are going to happen as a result of the eventual leave of the CFA franc, if that is even going to happen, and why is it that it's still being used currently? Anti-Saul. A stagnant economy and high youth unemployment, Sonko was able to galvanize his supporters due to mounting frustration with Sall. There has been growing uncertainty in Senegal over whether Sall will indeed step down when his second term ends in 2024. And guess what? Well, probably happen if it's seen that the imperialists feel like they have a benefit in maintaining his power. They will probably push for him to stay long beyond his terms, and we will see another president in Africa who has indefinite term limits because he is beholden to Western interests. Some important things to highlight. First of all, as the article really does show, this is not just a protest against Sall, but this is a protest against the French influence in Senegal. Now, this, when you consider in light of the fact that other African countries that we describe as Francophone, French-speaking African countries, such as Ivory Coast, such as Guinea, such as Mali, have all also experienced similar anti-government protests. And also the people on the ground have been very loud that their protest was being motivated by not just the fact that the government was not servicing them, but that they clearly see the colonial influence in their country. When you take that as a whole, it's very clear that Francophone Africa is really not having it anymore. And that's something that's beautiful to see, because unfortunately, a lot of the English-speaking countries and other language-speaking countries inside of Africa are very numb to the imperialist oppression. We don't necessarily see a way out. And the organizers on the ground inside of these countries have managed to really energize the people and help them to identify who is the person, what is the system that is actually responsible for their oppression. I also think it's very interesting when you look at the protest that's going on in Haiti, you see something very similar. Haiti obviously is also a French-speaking country, but really France has not had a real influence inside of the Haitian region for a long time. But really the American imperialists have exercised a similar role inside of Haiti, propping up their current president, basically allowing him to remain in power, giving him military aid, allowing their influence to continue inside of that country. When you consider these things all together, it's very clear that the people, African people, are finally saying that this imperialism can no longer go on. Now, as a result, we have to understand that our enemies, our oppressors, are behind the scenes trying to figure out a way to pacify us. That's what they do whenever they realize that their power is challenged. They find different ways to pacify resistance. They study us, if you don't know. They study our thinking. They study the way that we react to the oppression. For example, I actually talked about a few months ago that the French military was found to have been posing as African people on social media and posting pro-French tweets or Facebook posts or whatever. And you consider this, that they're actually looking for ways and looking for means to pacify this resistance. Although you might not see it outwardly, understand it is going on behind closed doors. The issue is that they haven't dealt with this before. They have not dealt with an outward calling out of the colonial system since colonial times, an outward recognition of the fact that the people are currently being colonized even under a neo-colonial government. They have not dealt with this before, and so they're going to do on their part is try to find a way to basically ease out the influence of the people who are calling out the colonial system and allow the people to remain inside of a position of being servile. Also consider the fact that I love that this article touched on it. Senegal has been very much represented as being, quote unquote, a stable country. Now, understand, when they say a country is stable, they're not saying that the country is actually one that is the well-being of the people is actually good, or that the stability inside of the hoods and the ghettos, or the people who are inside of the slums, they're not saying that that lifestyle is stable. They're saying that this is a stable place for outside governments to come and invest. This is a stable place for outside tourists to come and go around and enjoy the country while, the people live in despair. So these type of words saying that a country that is typically stable, that's very much should be a red flag to us. What African country that is controlled by the West is stable for African people? There are none. African stability has to be measured by the lifestyle, the livelihood of the everyday people, of the masses, not of these imperialist business interests that get to reign inside of the territory. So these are things that we should very much be careful whenever we say these types of things inside of the common discourse around our issues. So that's really all I have on this. I would love to hear all of your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next video. Hey family, this is Tierney Cherie. I'm here to make an announcement that I'm very, very excited to make. I'm excited because I really think this is something that is important for our people. Otherwise, I would not have devoted so much time and energy towards it. So I finished my first book, and the book title is Fostering False Identity, the Child Welfare System's Design of Social Control of the Black Family. Now, why is this book something that I think will be very important for our community? Well, number one, it's dealing with the system of white supremacy, particularly the way that the system has targeted our children. If you don't know, our children are literally our future. Without our children, we have no future. And so understand that the system is very crafty when figuring out what to derail first. And to me, it's no mistake that the system particularly went after the Black family. If you look at what happened whenever we were enslaved by this system, and continues to go after the Black family, continues to go after Black children, continues to try to villainize African parents. So for that, I wanted to particularly talk about this subject. Now, the other thing that the book will deal with is our African identities. Why is it that our African identities are a threat to the system? Why is it that whenever we want to identify ourselves as being African, we get so much drawback inside of the Black community? I think a lot of us are not aware of the history of assimilationist thought inside of our community, this idea that we have to be close to white in order to be accepted. And so that's another subject that we delve into in this book. So I'm hoping that anyone who is, obviously, if you're a parent, a Black parent, and you really want to understand why it is that these systems are going after your children, I encourage you to read this book. I hope that it will arm you with a lot of knowledge and a lot of foresight, not just about how to protect your own children, but how to organize in your community, because that's really the purpose of the book, is to say that we have to organize among ourselves in order to protect ourselves from this white supremacist system. And then obviously, if you're an organizer in general, this is something that I think is important for you to read, because like I said, this is a subject in the Black community that we just don't discuss enough. Child welfare is not something that is going to get enough attention. People obviously will organize them around other causes, but this is one that is really important that I feel like we have to pay more attention to.